Several soldiers push the boy out into the middle of the lake. Then they start beating drums to summon a monster lurking deep beneath the bottom. Just by looking at its head, it's difficult to guess what kind of fish this is. Even those who raised it couldn't tame it. In a blink of an eye, they became appetizers in the fish's belly. At this moment, the man and the blonde woman next to him don't dare to make a move. Fortunately, their teammates use homemade mines to support them, but the light from the explosion angers the aquatic monster. Thanks to the layer of slime on its body, the aquatic monster can easily move on land. On the other hand, its eyesight isn't very good, which gives them a little time to breathe. However, the fleeing soldiers inadvertently lead the monster right to them. Without time to explain to the crew, Captain Nemo hastily orders everyone to run back to the submarine. Unexpectedly, the aquatic monster gradually slides out of the forest and follows them, even wrapping itself around the submarine several times, causing it to tilt heavily to one side. The most terrifying thing is when the submarine gradually sinks to the bottom of the sea, the monster's entire body emits light. It turns out to be a giant electric eel. However, this electric eel is just one of the terrifying challenges that Captain Nemo must face throughout his journey to find the treasure. Initially, Nemo was just a prisoner laborer in the colony, responsible for shipbuilding for the East India Company. But unlike usual, today everyone's face is filled with excitement because the ship they secretly built is nearing completion. This is also their chance to escape. Every day after entering the deck, the shackles on their hands are removed, so they just wait for the guards to be inattentive. The ship designer glances at Nemo, and everyone takes action. The brothers below immediately seize the guards' weapons, imprison them in the warehouse, then each returns to their position, preparing to activate this colossal beast. But at this moment, the most frightening thing is a teammate betraying them. Sure enough, one friend, momentarily overjoyed, drops his weapon, accidentally activating the alarm. Thus, a bullet is fired into the hull, creating a deafening sound. Although there are no casualties, the guards waiting outside have noticed the anomaly. A fierce battle erupts immediately. The future crew of the Nautilus can only desperately cut the mooring cables. Initially, relying on their numerical advantage, they overwhelm the guards. Unexpectedly, someone pulls a strange object from the warehouse. Everyone is suppressed to the point that they can't even raise their heads. Fortunately, Nemo takes action and with just one shot takes out the machine gunner from afar. A crew member desperately rushes towards the mooring cables, but is shot by another guard. Seeing his comrade's sacrifice makes Nemo lose control. He frantically rushes forward wanting to save him but is pulled back by his teammates inside the submarine. Fortunately, the crew member, as he falls, manages to throw the candle in his hand outside. Thanks to the burning mooring cable, the teammates on the submarine seize the opportunity to restart the vessel. Before everyone's astonished eyes, the Nautilus finally breaks free from its restraints, beginning its miraculous 20,000-league journey under the sea. Under the guidance of the designer, the crew gradually adapts to their positions. The entire submarine slowly sinks to the bottom of the sea. The guards on shore still want to open fire, but they can't even scratch the iron hull of the Nautilus. Nemo also arrives at his captain's position, carefully maneuvering the Nautilus through the crevice. Underwater visibility is extremely low, so he can only rely on his instincts to navigate in the darkness. If he accidentally hits the surrounding cliffs, everyone will be buried at the bottom of the sea. Fortunately, they escape the danger and finally overcome the obstacle, reaching the vast open sea. But this freedom comes at a price. The East India Company will definitely hunt them down to the ends of the earth. As the oxygen in the cabin gradually depletes, Nemo is about to bring the crew to the surface to breathe when, unexpectedly, a merchant ship mistakes them for a whale and begins to hunt them. Nemo is not about to yield, so he accelerates straight towards the opponent. However, this is the first time the Nautilus has submerged. All the equipment hasn't been pressure tested yet, and the turbine suddenly malfunctions. Although it damages the merchant ship of the blonde woman, the inside of the submarine is also significantly damaged. Nemo is not a ruthless killer, so he still shows kindness by bringing the woman and the child on the small boat onto the submarine and chasing the captured guards and overseers onto the lifeboat. "Nemo, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. You will never find me." After the exchange of words, the Nautilus sinks to the bottom of the sea. Nemo decides to go to the North Sea to search for the secret treasure left behind when the Spanish fleet sank, and after succeeding, he will return the ship to the designer. But the designer suggests going to the French coast to repair the ship first and replenish supplies, as there is not much food left on board. Moreover, Nemo has kindly taken in the woman. With 3 more people and a dog on board, reaching the North Sea safely is almost impossible. Lena, the girl hiding nearby, overhears the conversation between the two men. She anxiously pulls Nemo aside and asks when she can disembark. It turns out that Lena initially came to Mumbai, India, to find her fiancé, but now she has been kidnapped by Nemo onto the submarine. Furthermore, he wants to go to the North Sea. She fears that if he is unhappy, he will throw her into the sea. But before they can finish their conversation, a strange sound suddenly comes from outside the cabin. It turns out that the East India Company's fleet has pursued them to this sea. The soldiers take a cannonball from the hold and light the fuse. Its length represents the detonation time. By accurately calculating the weight of the cannonball and the density of seawater, even the Nautilus, submerged dozens of meters below, will be affected by the shockwave. The crew members frantically adjust the submarine, but because they escaped in such a hurry, the submarine is not equipped with torpedoes or underwater weapons. They can only choose to evade. The Nautilus slowly sinks to the bottom of the sea. At this point, the depth has reached about 100 meters. The commanding officer on the warship is determined not to give up and orders the soldiers to pull the longest fuse possible and then throw another one. The crew members collectively hold their breath, because if they are hit, the outcome awaiting them will be the sinking of the ship. And everyone knows the price of sinking in the deep sea. Fortunately, the fuse explodes less than 5 meters away from them. Everyone rejoices after the near miss, but soon after, the lookout on the warship hears a strange sound underwater. Unexpectedly, a school of sperm whales is greeting them. Everyone is astonished, mouths agape. Only Nemo realizes the anomaly, because this is a sight only seen when diving into the deep sea. They rush to the equipment room only to discover that the diving depth has exceeded 100 meters and the turbine has now stopped working. If they don't repair it in time, before they die from lack of oxygen, they will definitely be crushed to death by the pressure of the deep sea. Fortunately, at this critical moment, Lena says she knows how to fix it, but Nemo can't possibly entrust the fate of the Nautilus to a woman. While they are anxiously searching for a solution, a sharp creaking sound rings out. The sturdy hull is about to succumb to the pressure of the deep sea. At this point, Captain Nemo can no longer maintain his masculine pride. He shouts at Lena, "Don't you know how to fix the ship? Hurry up and do it." As it turns out, the noble lady does know how to handle the ship. She begins to create a simple manual pressure relief valve. The crew members take turns trying their best to pull the lever, but no matter how hard they try, the Nautilus shows no signs of surfacing. On the contrary, due to their violent movements, the oxygen in the cabin is rapidly consumed. Dizziness from lack of oxygen hits everyone, not even the energetic dog is spared. Fortunately, Lena is still conscious at this time. She feels certain that there is an air leak on the ship, otherwise, the result wouldn't be like this. Amidst the labored breaths of the crew members, there is indeed a very small hissing sound of air leaking. It was just masked by the cheering of the crew earlier. Immediately, Lena tears a piece of cloth from her dress, dips it in oil, and wraps it around the leaking pipe. With Captain Nemo's help, the pipe is quickly repaired. Seeing hope, the crew members muster all their strength and finally succeed in bringing the Nautilus to the surface. Everyone breathes in the fresh air outside. But the narrow escape makes the crew members suddenly have second thoughts. Initially, they were just a temporarily assembled team, while the equipment inside the Nautilus is still incomplete. It's clearly safer to return to land. First, the two noblewomen, as soon as they see the land not far away, disregard their dresses and jump into the water to swim ashore, followed by the two Indian crew members. Nemo can only helplessly watch this scene and do nothing else. But soon, a squad of guards arrives from the shore. These are the people who received the notice from the East India Company, knowing that those on the Nautilus are all fugitives. So, they commandeered boats from the coastal civilians to pursue them. Lena also discovers this. She quickly realizes that the enemy has no intention of letting anyone survive, so she immediately turns around and swims back to the Nautilus. Just as she thought, although Lena's fiancé is a local nobleman, in the eyes of the East India Company, he is nothing. They would never give up reclaiming the Nautilus for a woman. However, Nemo is now in big trouble. The ship suddenly loses all power. Although he and the designer have checked everywhere, they still can't find the cause. Just as they are at an impasse, Lena calmly returns and pulls a steel wire out of the wiring. Clearly, in order to escape smoothly, she had secretly sabotaged the ship earlier. Nemo can only feel helpless, but he can't do anything to her because the urgent matter now is to escape the pursuit of the guards. As the crew members return to their positions, the Nautilus also begins to slowly sink. The guards standing on the deck watch in despair and helplessness as this giant disappears from the surface of the sea. Although they have escaped this crisis, the morale of the crew is still a major issue. Nemo must give them a reason to stay, while forcing them with violence is not Nemo's style. Just as he is racking his brains, fate gives him an opportunity. A whaling ship has used a baby whale as bait to catch a giant sperm whale. The crew members are all arguing whether to save it or not. Initially, Nemo doesn't want to interfere, but a sentence from the female crew member changes his mind. It turns out that the fishermen are stealing the baby whale from its mother. Under Nemo's command, the Nautilus jumps out of the water and appears in front of the whalers. Before they can understand what is happening, they see Nemo appear on the deck and jump towards the harpooned mother whale. Of course, the fishermen will not stand idly by and watch their prey be snatched away. They immediately take up their weapons and fire back. Notably, the crew members of the Nautilus unexpectedly unite. The first mate controls the submarine's distance while the sailors quickly return fire, trying to buy time for Nemo. Waiting until the rope is cut, Nemo tries to grab the harpoon and sink to the bottom of the sea with the whale. Has anyone seen the captain? Fortunately, after a while, he returns to the Nautilus with the harpoon. This greatly boosts the morale of the crew. For the first time, they feel the power of a collective. Nemo, seizing the opportunity, even wants to persuade the fishermen to release the baby whale. But that is the livelihood of the fishermen. Nemo can only use money to buy it. Although he has just escaped from prison and is penniless, Lena beside him is not. Without thinking, Nemo takes off Lena's gold bracelet and throws it over. After all, Lena also agreed to rescue the whale. This is considered a small revenge for being tricked by her earlier. But that gold bracelet is a relic of Lena's father. Nemo also regrets it after knowing this and silently remembers this in his heart. However, because of this interference, the East India Company once again discovers their whereabouts and dispatches a destroyer to pursue them. Normally, a submarine hiding at the bottom of the sea is very difficult to detect, but the destroyer is equipped with the latest artificial detection device, which can amplify underwater sounds and transmit them to the equipment. Nemo is well aware of this, so he immediately orders everyone to shut down all engines, wanting to wait until the enemy can't find them and leaves on their own. But while he can ask the crew members to be quiet, he can't control the dog. So, as soon as the dog barks, the opponent's eyes light up. Found them. As the Nautilus is discovered, the captain of the destroyer also reveals himself. Surprisingly, based on the photo on land, it seems that he and Nemo are old acquaintances. Meanwhile, the Nautilus has shut down its engine to avoid the enemy, allowing the submarine to slowly sink. But of course, turning off the engine in a dangerous deep-sea world is an unwise act. A giant squid tentacle suddenly appears outside the window, wrapping tightly around the Nautilus. Captain Nemo tries to start the engine but discovers that the ship is immobile. As the squid's tentacles tighten, the crew members all feel the fear from the deep sea. If they don't act now, the submarine's windows will soon shatter. As captain, Nemo has a duty to ensure the safety of the crew. At the same time, this is also a good opportunity to consolidate his authority as captain. Nemo has no intention of directly confronting this monster. He just needs to shoot to scare it away. Fortunately, the experimental diving suit has no malfunctions. Nemo successfully climbs onto the deck, but just as he is about to pull the trigger, the giant squid senses the danger and swings a massive slap, flinging Nemo away. Fortunately, the quality of the diving suit is excellent, and the water current helps him to absorb most of the impact. But while Nemo is unharmed, the Nautilus is not so lucky. The giant squid drags the submarine violently as if it's a toy. Nemo desperately runs towards the nearby harpoon gun, but the giant squid has been paying attention to his movements. Immediately, a tentacle lashes out, catching him off guard. At this critical moment, the mother whale that Nemo saved earlier appears in time. It grabs the squid's tentacle, trying to pull it away from the Nautilus. But the giant squid is not willing to give up its newly acquired toy. The fierce struggle between the two makes Nemo feel the insignificance of humans for the first time. Finally, the mother whale wins by biting off the squid's tentacle and chasing it away. The crew members simultaneously breathe a sigh of relief. This incident makes Nemo quickly realize one thing. To survive in the deep sea, making friends with a few whales is definitely a wise choice. Upon returning to the submarine, Captain Nemo is welcomed as a hero. But there is still a difficult problem in front of everyone. The warship Dolet is hovering on the surface. Once the Nautilus starts its engine, it will be detected by the warship's sonar. Fortunately, Nemo has come up with a solution. Although the torpedoes on the submarine are not yet equipped with explosives, they can still be launched. They can stuff some noise-making objects inside and launch them to lure the Dolet away. When the torpedo is launched, the long-awaiting sonar operator shouts excitedly, indicating that Nemo's plan has been successful. The Dolet is attracted by the torpedo and leaves the area, while the Nautilus once again escapes danger. Next, they need to go ashore to replenish supplies, but at this moment, Lena is bitten on the dress by the dog. It seems something urgent is happening. It turns out that the dark-skinned man has been captured by a guard who had infiltrated their ranks. Lena calmly assures him that no one will harm the guard, causing him to lower his weapon. To be fair, this guy is quite unlucky. When Nemo escaped, he was knocked unconscious by the third guard and locked in the warehouse. Then, when they released the prisoners, they forgot about him. In fact, he doesn't want to be a soldier. He'd rather be a sailor adventuring on the sea. Of course, Nemo won't easily trust him. He only promises Lena that he will spare the guard's life and release him when they reach port. Now, where to replenish supplies is another problem, because the British Empire at that time was known as the empire on which the sun never sets. Wherever they go, they will be pursued by the East India Company. At this moment, Nemo suddenly points to an island on the map. Indonesia in the 19th century was still a Dutch colony. The relationship between them and the British has always been tense. Perhaps they can buy some supplies there. But the Nautilus is too large, so as soon as they land, Nemo and his party are discovered by the local guards. The local lord doesn't show any hostility at first, because the enemy of your enemy is your friend. But when he sees the goods that Nemo uses for trading, he almost bursts out laughing. In his eyes, these things are nothing but garbage. But after all, they are friends. Moreover, he recognizes Nemo's identity as an Indian prince. Nemo's father and he are old acquaintances. The Lord agrees to provide supplies for free, but it will take some time. Everyone can go to his palace to rest first. As for Nemo, he is also eager to know about his father, so the group sets off for the palace, leaving only a few people in charge of receiving supplies and looking after the Nautilus. The East India Company guard is imprisoned. Everyone rarely has such a relaxing break, but no one realizes that this is just a conspiracy. Surprisingly, the designer finds an ancient book in the Lord's private library. It records a name that every navigator dreams of, Atlantis. At the same time, the crew members receiving supplies on the shore discover something unusual. Unexpectedly, the food sent by the Lord is all spoiled and moldy. He doesn't want to be friends at all. The pockmarked man can only run to the Lord's palace. Meanwhile, in the Lord's study, Nemo learns about his father's deeds for the first time. It turns out that his father was once a minor king in India, who cooperated with many countries to establish a colonial company. But later, to eliminate his father, the capitalists framed him and imprisoned him, then sent people to assassinate him. After all, this is the era of the strong. Because there is no heir, the property will naturally belong to the accomplices. The Lord says that he can help him regain his father's property. Thus, the two chat happily. When he learns that Lena is knowledgeable about mechanics, he expresses great joy, because his ice-making machine has broken down and no one can fix it. While the two go out to the living room, Nemo is still thinking about his father. He knows he is a prince but didn't expect the situation behind it to be so complicated. Therefore, he secretly returns to the Lord's study, wanting to take his father's picture down as a keepsake. But unexpectedly, he discovers the telegraph machine on the table constantly ringing. On it is a message from the Lord informing the East India Company. Being caught red-handed makes the Lord a little embarrassed, but in the face of profit, there are no permanent enemies, nor permanent friends. If anyone is to blame, it can only be the British for offering too much. While Nemo is imprisoned, the crew members are enjoying a buffet outside. Notably, they hear that there is a cannibal tribe here, coupled with the fierce eyes of the soldiers as if they want to devour them. But the crew doesn't know that the soldiers are just craving the food on the table. They have worked hard for the Kaiser for many years but have never enjoyed such treatment. At this time, the pockmarked man has approached the palace, but before informing everyone to retreat, he discovers food and supplies in the warehouse. He must find a way to bring them back to the Nautilus. Meanwhile, Lena's repair work is almost finished, but as she proceeds to the final step, she hears a strange noise under the floor, as if someone is whispering. Following the direction of the sound, Lena discovers a group of girls in ragged clothes in the basement. They are laboriously carrying coal, using a steam engine to continuously power the palace. As a fellow woman, Lena can't bear it any longer. She brings them to the outdoor banquet. Naturally, the musicians and the soldiers who see this are stunned. In fact, they are the parents of these children. Unfortunately, the whole family has sold themselves to the Lord and has no human rights at all. The little girl looks up at her father. Although he desperately signals her not to touch anything, she really can't resist the temptation of the delicious food. Unexpectedly, not long after, the Lord rushes over. He has just humiliated Nemo in prison and conveniently released the East India Company guard. Now, seeing the slaves daring to sit and eat at the table makes him instantly furious. At this moment, the Lord is also ready to turn against the people on the ship. He walks up to the little girl and sprinkles a handful of dirt onto her bread. It turns out that in his eyes, slaves are not worthy of eating such delicacies. Witnessing this scene makes the soldiers extremely indignant. The captain wants to step forward and take the blame for the children, but the Lord completely ignores them and even orders the soldiers to execute their children right in front of everyone. The crew members who witness all this can no longer bear it. The third guard directly uses words to incite the soldiers to revolt. But the Lord doesn't believe they dare to act. He even confidently pushes aside each rifle's sight. Seeing this scene makes the third guard astonished. These people are not slaves for no reason. But right after the Lord leaves, he immediately orders the guards to attack, clearly wanting to eliminate all the crew members and soldiers. During the confrontation between the two sides, the designer also hears the commotion outside. He hurriedly puts away the map of Atlantis, preparing to return to the Nautilus and regroup with everyone. Lena goes to the study to find Nemo but accidentally encounters the released guard. It seems he has decided to switch sides, as he snatches the prison keys from the guard for Lena to rescue Nemo, while he stays behind to block the way. But even in such a tense situation, Lena and Nemo still don't forget to argue in front of the prison door. After promising Lena that he will take her to Mumbai, Nemo suddenly reaches towards Lena's hair and takes her hairpin to unlock the door. Needless to say, Lena is exasperated. She pulls out the key, much to Nemo's surprise. At the same time, the soldiers, under the leadership of the third guard, have also won the battle. They chant slogans of liberation and storm into the Lord's palace. But upon entering the room, the third guard discovers the guard secretly doing something. The guard explains that he wants to cut off communication between this place and the East India Company, then uses a dagger to destroy the telegraph machine. However, the third guard keenly notices something amiss. The telegraph machine sent a message before being destroyed. Unexpectedly, the guard planned to pretend to surrender and infiltrate the Nautilus, cooperating with the Dolet to eliminate Nemo and his companions. Did you send this message? Seeing his secret exposed, the guard can only fire a shot and run away. As for the Lord, he also receives the only good news. Lena has fixed his ice-making machine. When the noisy soldiers arrive, the Lord decides to temporarily take refuge and wait for reinforcements. He escapes himself, conveniently taking the injured third guard with him. At this time, Nemo and his companions have gathered at the port, and the pockmarked man has also managed to bring back the supplies. But due to the hasty movement, the wheels are unfortunately damaged. Amidst the supplies scattered all over the ground, Nemo also discovers the silhouette of the Dolet on the sea. At this moment, the guard also runs over to report that someone has been captured by the Lord. And because of his previous act of providing the key, Nemo agrees to let him board the ship. As for the captured person, although Nemo wants to save him, for the safety of the Nautilus, he still orders the ship to weigh anchor. But just as they submerge the submarine, they hear a boom. A cannonball grazes the Nautilus and explodes underwater. This is like a warning to everyone. Their enemy doesn't want to destroy the Nautilus, but wants the crew to surrender. Therefore, Nemo immediately comes up with a plan. He decides to play the hacking game that Indians love the most. Nemo alone, without a diving suit, directly surfaces to provoke the soldiers, causing them to fire in unison. Then, he dives back into the water and swims towards the shooter. The blonde-haired man thinks Nemo is going crazy and orders the soldiers to redirect their guns, locking onto him. Unexpectedly, the Nautilus also takes this opportunity to start up, using its propeller to stir up the mud at the bottom of the sea. Captain Nemo's figure is hidden in the mud, and amidst the astonished gazes of the soldiers, he quickly swims to the front of a window. He pulls out a small axe and slams it against the glass. The Nautilus's windows are specially made, but the Dolets are not. As soon as the glass breaks, Nemo is pushed out by the water pressure. The crew members, wearing diving suits, arrive in time and rescue the captain back to the Nautilus. Thanks to the mud at the bottom of the sea, they successfully break through the Dolet's encirclement. However, since they didn't have time to bring the supplies they just collected at the port, everyone still faces food shortages. Fortunately, the sailors have come to regard the Nautilus as their home. Some try to grow vegetables inside the submarine, while others learn to go out and fish. Although the harvest is not much, it solves their urgent needs. The Nautilus passes through the Strait of Malacca to the Pacific Ocean, officially beginning its ocean adventure. However, while food can be obtained through fishing, there is no place to replenish their water supply. Today, Nemo leads the sailors to land on a deserted island to search for fresh water and replenish supplies. The first thing that catches their eye is the dragon fruit trees laden with fruit. Nemo lets the white-haired woman pick fruit on the shore, while he leads 3 others to search for fresh water. But no one expects the dog to inhale some kind of spore on the shore, posing a potential danger for the upcoming journey. Meanwhile, experiencing his first exploration of a deserted island, the black boy finds everything incredibly novel. In addition, he doesn't want to be a third wheel to Nemo and Lena, so he runs off alone deeper into the forest and stumbles upon a crab camouflaged as a rock. Perhaps thinking this would be delicious boiled, the black boy follows the crab deeper and deeper, completely unaware that there are signs of human habitation nearby. The baby crab quickly crawls to its mother. Only then does the black boy realize he has angered a creature he shouldn't have. Fortunately, the creature only wants to warn him to stay away from its child. But just as he relaxes, he discovers countless human skeletons overhead. Nemo comforts him not to be afraid, but it's clear that this place is not safe. Just as they are about to turn back, they accidentally trigger a trap on the ground. The trap mechanism is immediately activated, but fortunately, due to not being triggered for a long time, some parts have decayed, and the alarm bell doesn't have time to ring. Meanwhile, the soldiers in the camp are busy drawing lots. They have an agreement that if they haven't found food or water for a long time, they will sacrifice someone to the water monster. Today, a soldier is very unlucky to draw the shortest stick. But just as the others tie him up and prepare for the execution, the alarm bell finally rings loudly. The ringing bell means there are intruders. At least they can catch some prey. While the crowd aggressively rushes towards the trap, Nemo and the others still haven't found a way to escape. At this critical moment, a dark figure appears from afar, along with a heavy thud. Naturally, the soldiers in the distance also notice that the prey has escaped the trap and accelerate their run. After a brief introduction, the black woman who saved Nemo and the others invites them to her treehouse to take refuge. From the way she moves through the forest, it's clear she has lived in this jungle for a long time. Nemo follows her into a foul-smelling cave and suddenly slips. It turns out they're inside a giant hollow tree trunk. Even more surprising, the pursuing soldiers are right below them. Nemo holds his breath, not daring to make a sound. But then a spider crawls onto his head. Judging by its color, it's clearly poisonous. Even more surprisingly, Lena is not afraid at all. She picks up the spider and teases Nemo, then mischievously throws it down to the soldiers below. After many twists and turns, they finally reach the girl's hideout. The scene inside leaves everyone stunned. No one expected the black girl to be able to grow vegetables in her hideout, and even create a freshwater filtration device. It's clear that Nemo's submarine desperately needs such a talent, so both sides prepare to head to the Nautilus. But the black boy causes trouble out of curiosity. While exploring the hideout, he goes deeper and deeper, eventually getting scared by a snake and rolling out, crashing into the searching soldiers. Fortunately, he still understands the situation. No matter how he is interrogated, he doesn't reveal the location of the Nautilus, only saying that his ship also capsized. Seeing that they can't get any more information, the leading soldier ignores him and prepares to directly take the boy for sacrifice. Several soldiers push the boy out into the middle of the lake, then they strike the drum a few times, summoning a monster dwelling beneath the bottom. Just by looking at its head, it's hard to tell what kind of fish this is, but it certainly enjoys eating meat. Unexpectedly, as soon as they awaken the monster at the bottom of the lake, Nemo and Lena arrive. The soldiers immediately stare at them. Stuck on this deserted island for so many years, this is the first time they have seen a woman, and a beautiful one at that. Taking advantage of the moment they are captivated by Lena's beauty, the black woman throws a rope down from the tree, successfully rescuing the boy. When the monster surfaces, the soldier still wants to rely on the relationship he has cultivated with it to command it to attack Nemo. But he is mistaken. Wild beasts cannot be tamed, and he himself becomes the appetizer. Thanks to the layer of slime on its body, the aquatic monster can easily move on land. Fortunately, its eyesight isn't very good, giving them some time to breathe. However, the fleeing soldiers inadvertently lead the monster right to them. Without time to explain to the crew, Nemo hastily orders everyone to run back to the Nautilus. Only Lena is still in a daze, saying they are being chased by a fish. Amidst everyone's puzzled looks, a low growl echoes from the shore, and a massive shadow quickly slides out of the forest. Everyone is no longer in the mood for jokes. Fortunately, the eel's eyesight is poor, so it hasn't detected the Nautilus yet. But as soon as the captain starts the engine, the electrical current seems to make the monster instantly lock onto their target. Unfortunately, at this moment, only the black woman is still standing on the deck in a daze. She has never seen a ship that submerges underwater, and furthermore, she doesn't understand the language of the Indian man, so she doesn't know what to do. In the blink of an eye, she is swallowed by the fish. The fish has a natural advantage underwater. Before the Nautilus can even start up, its hull is tightly wrapped. The ship tilts sharply to one side, causing the sailors to tumble. But that's not the most terrifying thing. As the Nautilus sinks to the bottom of the sea, the monster's entire body glows. It turns out to be an electric eel. Under the strong electric current, although the sailors are unharmed, the electronic components on the submarine all catch fire. Nemo immediately orders the engine to be shut down to avoid further damage and asks if the crew has any ideas. Surprisingly, Lena, who grew up with a physicist father, is very proficient in physics and mechanics. So, after some complex calculations, she confidently proposes a solution. We can use the engine to electrocute the eel. Just about 1500 volts. Theoretically, this solution is feasible, but if they are careless, the entire ship will be fried. Nemo announces over the radio that he supports this decision. As long as it doesn't damage the engine, Lena can do whatever she wants. In fact, Nemo has already tried hacking again by wearing a diving suit and going out to deal with the eel, but the hatch is blocked by the eel's body and he can't get out. Now, they can only pin all their hopes on Lena. But they are unaware that a bigger crisis is silently approaching. The dog previously encountered some kind of spore on the deserted island. Now its body is constantly trembling, and the spores have spread into the cabin. As for the crew, they are unaware of this and are still busy trying to electrocute the electric eel. As the Nautilus's engine starts, the voltage continues to rise. The eel also senses something unusual and releases an electric shock. The voltage gradually reaches its maximum value, but the eel remains motionless. Lena insists that her calculations are correct, but reality deals her a painful blow. After a series of electric sparks, the eel is still clinging to the Nautilus, but the crew members are knocked to the ground by the high voltage current. Sadness and discouragement spread among everyone, and the symptoms of spore infection also begin to appear. First, the mustachioed man loses control and smashes the pressure gauge on the submarine, while the designer discovers the guard secretly looking at documents in his room. But clearly, the guard doesn't realize he is infected. He collapses while reading, and the designer has no time to pay attention to him, only caring about whether the map of Atlantis is still there. As for Lena, with Nemo's help, she has completed the electric discharge device again. She doesn't believe there's a problem with her calculations and decides to try again. Unfortunately, the result remains the same. At this moment, a sound comes from the cockpit. The eel suddenly makes a new move. Nemo no longer has time to comfort Lena, only telling her to repair the engine. But Lena can't accept her failure for a while, and the housekeeper also loses patience with her. Your arrogance is the reason for your failure. You are too proud and never admit your mistakes. You will doom us all. While Lena is reflecting on herself, Nemo arrives at the cockpit and is surprised to find that the eel has released the submarine on its own. However, the surrounding temperature is rising rapidly. Apparently, the eel has sensed danger and is forced to abandon its prey. But in its haste, it has gotten a piece of its dorsal fin stuck on the submarine. As the eel departs, everyone gets a clear view of the scene before them. Unexpectedly, it's an active underwater volcano. The 20,000 leagues under the sea journey is about to turn into a journey to the center of the Earth. The white-haired woman wants to change the submarine's course but finds it impossible to maneuver. It's clearly stuck by the eel's dorsal fin. Nemo calls down to the engine room for more power, but Lena is still trapped in her failure, unable to break free. Even worse, the black boy in the torpedo room reports that several cotton bales soaked in flammable material are present. Once the temperature gets too high, the inside of the Nautilus will explode. Now, the only option is to transfer them to the cold storage on the ship, but it's clear that a child like him can't do it alone. Nemo sends the pockmarked man to assist while he puts on a diving suit, preparing to personally remove the stuck dorsal fin from the submarine. But he doesn't expect the spore infection to have affected him. As he makes his way to the diving chamber, Nemo seems to see the figure of his deceased wife. He anxiously chases after her, as if he has returned to that warm home, seeing his obedient daughter bring out a gift, the very origin of the name Nautilus. If Nemo weren't an Indian prince, perhaps the East India Company wouldn't have targeted his family. As Nemo collapses onto a chair, unconscious, the crew members seem to have completely lost hope. The Nautilus hurtles straight towards the volcano. Fortunately, the pockmarked man and the black boy have transferred the explosive barrels into cold storage. The boy sees the black infection mark on the pockmarked man's hand, but the man mistakes it for dirt and doesn't pay attention. It's not until the boy suddenly collapses unconscious that he realizes an unknown infection has appeared on the ship. But the most important thing now is to deal with the explosive barrels. After the pockmarked man transfers all the barrels into cold storage, he suddenly discovers that the infection mark on his hand has disappeared. It turns out that low temperature is the best antidote. But after transferring the crew members into cold storage for detoxification, the Nautilus must have already plunged into the volcano. Who will be the savior at this moment? Fortunately, Lena finally regains consciousness. But she finds the submarine eerily silent. When she runs out to search, she finds everyone unconscious. It's not until she reaches the diving chamber that Lena encounters the pockmarked man, the only one who hasn't collapsed. She knows that once the black mark reaches the eyes, the person will lose consciousness. At the same time, simply lowering the temperature can resolve the crew's infection. Lena decides to put on a diving suit and go outside to remove the dorsal fin, while the pockmarked man will control the direction inside the submarine. Fortunately, everyone has been trained along the way, so even one person can operate the diving suit. Lena endures the suffocating fear and crawls into the diving chamber, opening the water valve. As the warm seawater rushes in, a fiery red world appears beneath her feet. Although she trembles with fear, she overcomes it and jumps out of the chamber. Relying on the rope attached to her, Lena slowly makes her way towards the bow of the Nautilus. But in a hidden corner, unnoticed by anyone, the black mark has spread to her face. When Lena reaches halfway, seeing her unconscious friends inside the submarine, she suddenly hallucinates, remembering the day her father passed away. It's a pain forever etched in Lena's heart. Just as she is about to lose herself in the hallucination, a sentence from her father awakens her in time. "When we stumble, what should we do? Get back up where we fell." Her father's words give Lena boundless courage. She wipes away her tears and begins to endure the scorching heat while struggling to crawl towards the dorsal fin. But when she is less than 5 meters away from her target, Lena suddenly realizes that the rope attached to her is not long enough. She immediately detaches the rope without hesitation, leaving herself with no way back. Lena leaps forward and finally grabs the obstructing dorsal fin. At the same time, the Nautilus enters a life or death moment. Lena musters all her strength. She's not only racing against the Nautilus, but also battling her own infection. The moment the dorsal fin is removed, the Nautilus's course changes instantly, narrowly grazing the edge of the volcano's underwater waterfall. But under the tremendous impact, Lena is thrown off. She can only try to cling to the hull of the Nautilus, but unfortunately, the surface is too smooth for her to grip. As the surrounding temperature drops, the Nautilus crew is finally detoxified from the spores. While they are hugging each other and celebrating their escape, Captain Nemo realizes that Lena hasn't returned. He immediately orders the crew to turn back, unwilling to lose another important companion. Fortunately, the diving suits on the Nautilus are very sturdy, so they quickly find Lena. But when Nemo brings her back to the ship, they discover that she has already stopped breathing. Everyone is plunged into grief, only the designer refuses to give up. He disassembles parts of the electric gun to create a simple defibrillator. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Fortunately, under everyone's efforts, Lena finally opens her eyes. She is greeted with cheers like a hero, and Nemo officially accepts her as a member of the Nautilus. And when she has almost fully recovered, Lena recounts something strange. While at the bottom of the sea with dwindling oxygen, before passing out from suffocation, she vaguely saw a structure resembling Noah's Ark. Initially, she thought it was a hallucination before death, but the designer's expression turns serious upon hearing this. That's the lost civilization he has always been searching for, called Atlantis. Nemo thinks he's joking because it's just a legend. Moreover, the legend is located in the Atlantic Ocean, not the Pacific Ocean where they're currently. But the designer immediately presents evidence, the map found in the Lord's library earlier. However, Nemo is not interested in Atlantis. His goal is to find the treasure of sunken ships and then equip the Nautilus with weapons to take revenge on the East India Company. Atlantis is only suitable for archaeology, with very little profit value. But seeing Lena's desire for exploration, coupled with the designer's persistent persuasion, Nemo realizes that exploring the seabed has always been the designer's dream, just like his goal is to seek revenge. Finally, he agrees to this undersea expedition, considering it as helping his old friend fulfill his dream. This will be the only time. So, a 5-person exploration team is officially formed. The guard even wants to take the opportunity to catch some fish to bring back, but the designer stops him. This is a scientific expedition, not a hunting trip. He replaces everyone's electric guns with stun guns. As the diving chamber slowly opens, everyone officially begins their journey to Atlantis. Now, it becomes clear that Lena wasn't mistaken. The designer throws a stone into the deep abyss. Along with the crisp sound, they see a strange light flicker in the darkness. This is clearly the Atlantean Noah's Ark that the designer has always been searching for. The ground here is formed by regular hexagonal stone blocks. The designer even finds stairs somewhere. But while everyone is excitedly exploring, a giant shadow silently approaches them. The group descends the stairs, soon reaching a flat area. Following the water current, it's clear that there's another place located above. So, they remove the weights from their bodies and quickly swim up. Here, they can breathe, and there's a musty smell in the air. They light flares and begin to explore. Bova quickly finds a species of plant he's never seen before. But this place seems a bit small to be considered a city. The bearded man is tasked with guarding the exit, while the others continue deeper inside. Lena quickly discovers fossils on the cliff face, a creature called a crinoid that existed over 400 million years ago. As Lena excitedly describes these ancient creatures, she suddenly notices the guard, Robert, standing silently with his body trembling constantly. Curious, she approaches him and witnesses a sight that sends chills down her spine. Unexpectedly, the crinoids, thought to exist only in books, are present here in a whole swarm. She tries to remove them with her hand but finds she can't pull them off. Luckily, when the flashlight breaks, more glass shards scatter on the ground, and everyone uses those shards. After struggling to cut off these slug-like creatures, Lena's glove accidentally tears. At the same time, Captain Nemo rushes over. Under the light of the flares, countless ancient creatures have unknowingly crawled all over the cliff. They must retreat immediately. But the designer has finally reached this place after much difficulty, so he's excitedly trying to crawl into a tunnel, completely unaware of the impending danger. Nemo and the others manage to reach the exit. Fortunately, these crinoids seem to be afraid of light. The flares made from magnesium powder and oxygen can hold them back for a while, but Nemo must go find the designer. Before leaving, he entrusts the Nautilus to Lena. If he doesn't return, Lena will be the next captain. As the two bid farewell and depart, the designer finally clears the rubble and crawls inside. He finds a yellow glowing stone in the soil, but before he can name it, Nemo rushes over, interrupting him. They must leave this place immediately. They hastily stand up. Initially, they thought they could safely return to the exit with the light source, but it turns out this also has a time limit. As darkness envelops them, the screeching of the crinoids echoes from all directions. They can only quicken their pace. But unexpectedly, when they are less than 10 meters from the exit, the designer's leg is entangled by a crinoid. He can only try to crawl towards Nemo. Unfortunately, just as they reach each other, more crinoids swarm in, pulling the designer back and quickly submerging half of his body. He looks at Nemo with the same determined gaze as when they rebelled together in prison. Nemo immediately understands and extends his hand. In the final moment, the designer manages to hand over the glowing stone to Nemo before being completely dragged down into the dark depths by the swarm of ancient creatures. Nemo himself isn't much better off, as the strong impact has cracked his helmet, increasing the risk of suffocation. Meanwhile, the three who escaped also find themselves in a dangerous situation. A group of unidentified marine creatures attacks them. At this moment, the scent of blood from Lena's injured hand attracts a shark. In the nick of time, the stun guns they carry prove effective. As for Nemo, he stumbles out of the tunnel and collapses from lack of oxygen. He has clearly exhausted himself to get out. In this critical moment, the bearded man exchanges his helmet with Nemo, and they finally make it back to the Nautilus together. Although they have escaped safely, they have lost the designer forever. Nemo clenches the stone in his palm, the dream the designer has entrusted to him. The crew members are all immersed in sorrow. While sorting through the designer's belongings, Nemo accidentally finds a recording tape. It contains a casual conversation between the designer and Lena. In fact, he knew that Nemo's purpose in taking the Nautilus was for revenge, but he still firmly supported Nemo as captain because he hoped to use the beauty of the underwater world to heal Nemo's wounded heart. After escaping, the ship continues towards the Arctic. But just as Nemo and Lena are discussing the majestic scenery, a cannon blast suddenly echoes from behind. It turns out that the Dolet has been following them like a shadow, continuing their pursuit. Nemo immediately orders the crew to accelerate to maximum speed. They should have submerged before reaching the glacier, but to completely escape the Dolet, Nemo decides to take a gamble, using a daring dive to throw the Dolet onto the glacier. Seeing that the Nautilus shows no signs of slowing down, the blonde-haired man falls for the trap. He orders his soldiers to accelerate and follow, but Nemo also makes a serious mistake. He miscalculates the Nautilus's diving depth limit, causing them to crash headfirst into the ice. The Dolet's fate is even worse. With its immense momentum, it crashes through the ice and slides down into the deep Arctic waters. Fortunately, the collision with the Nautilus helps to slow the ship down somewhat. Finally, the Dolet comes to a stop, but its propeller is stuck in the ice. In this freezing environment, no one can survive for 10 seconds underwater. They are completely trapped. The Nautilus also faces problems. The strong impact has damaged a component, and they need a forge to repair it. Conveniently, the Dolet has won. Left with no other choice, Nemo has to find a way to negotiate. Baron Henry on the Dolet thinks Nemo has come to surrender. He is about to order his soldiers to open fire, but the blonde-haired man stops him. In their current situation, it's better to hear what the other party has to say first. Nemo's request is simple. As long as they agree to lend them the forge to repair the damaged component on the Nautilus, he will use the submarine to help the Dolet escape its predicament. If the blonde-haired man tries to seize the Nautilus, the mustachioed man behind Nemo will immediately detonate the submarine, leaving everyone to freeze together. The blonde-haired man agrees to this deal, but he adds another condition. Lena's fiancé is on the Dolet, and he wants Lena to be included in the agreement. Unfortunately, Nemo disagrees because Lena is not a commodity. Whether she stays or goes is her own decision. The two sides temporarily agree to a truce, and Nemo returns to the submarine with a complicated expression. He is reluctant to let Lena go but can't think of a reason to keep her. As part of the agreement, the crew members need to attach the Dolet's anchor chains to the submarine. However, they are mocked by the soldiers watching on the deck, who say they were born to be beasts of burden. The atmosphere between the two sides immediately becomes tense. While Lena is in the forge repairing the component, and also to ease the tension, Nemo and the blonde-haired man agree to a game of baseball on the snow. On Lena's side, trouble arises. In truth, she and her fiancé have never met. It was all arranged by her mother. The two begin an awkward conversation in the forge. Henry believes that women should stay at home and take care of their husbands and children, that wielding a hammer is a task for the lower class. He is met with Lena's disdainful gaze. Humiliated, Henry goes out to join the baseball game, intending to vent his anger on the crew members. Unexpectedly, due to his arrogance and underestimation of the opponent, he steps on a line, causing his team to lose. At this moment, Lena has also finished repairing the component. She hands it to Nemo to take back to the submarine. She has made up her mind. She wants to return to the side of those who need her. But Henry refuses to agree. He has given Lena's mother a large dowry. Lena should rightfully be his. His aristocratic pride will not allow him to let her go. Soldiers escort Lena back to her room. Henry even brings out dresses, wanting her to have dinner with him. But after witnessing the wonders of the underwater world, Lena is no longer the noble lady she once was. She desires to return to those who need her. The housekeeper, originally sent to escort Lena to marry, has also changed her mind. She pulls out a dagger and stabs the Baron in the leg, then shouts, "Run!" Thus, the two begin their escape from the ship. Meanwhile, Nemo is directing everyone to attach the anchor chains. He looks towards the Dolet but doesn't see the woman he is waiting for. Just as he is hesitating whether to wait a little longer, Lena and the housekeeper are surrounded by soldiers. Fortunately, after a long period of underwater exploration, they have honed their agility. They use the ropes on the ship to slide down onto the ice. Since there is still a peace treaty between the two sides, the soldiers dare not open fire and can only watch helplessly as Lena returns to the Nautilus. "Welcome aboard. I'm glad to be aboard." At this moment, the ship's engine starts. The Nautilus's propeller begins to rotate at a dizzying speed. The anchor chains gradually tighten, and with a loud bang, the crew members feel a tremendous resistance from behind. Just like that, the Dolet is slowly pulled out of the glacier. But just as they escape danger, Baron Henry impatiently orders his soldiers to attack and sink the Nautilus to vent his anger. This action is immediately met with sarcasm from the blonde-haired man, as tearing up the truce agreement so casually is not the proper conduct of a nobleman. But Henry doesn't care about that. He just wants to vent all his resentment and humiliation. Without waiting for the blonde-haired man's objection, he walks straight to the gunner's position, pushes the soldier aside, and conveniently knocks down the blonde-haired man as well. It must be said that he aimed well, but since the slow-burning fuse hasn't been lit, the cannonball doesn't explode, only creating a small dent on the Nautilus. Henry looks at the scene before him in disappointment. He is about to fire another shot when the blonde-haired man stops him with a pistol. Notably, once one side has attacked, it means the truce is over. Nemo doesn't know what has happened on the ship. He only thinks that the Dolet is going back on their word. Angrily, he grabs a hammer and goes to the deck, intending to break the pins on the anchor chains. Thus, the battle continues. As for the soldiers, they receive orders from their superiors and begin firing. In an instant, Nemo is surrounded. Fortunately, he tenaciously removes the anchor chains and finally escapes back to the Nautilus. The Nautilus submerges. To completely escape the Dolet, Nemo makes an extremely daring decision: to cross the entire Arctic Ocean under the ice. But if they don't reach their destination before the oxygen runs out, they will be forever trapped under the Arctic sea ice. Naturally, when Nemo prepares to cross the Arctic under the ice, he encounters strong opposition from the crew, as they believe he is risking everyone's lives. To appease them, Nemo offers an explanation based on Lena's advice. He says that the 6-day oxygen supply is enough for them to cross the ice sheet. However, the sailors refuse to believe him. They need Nemo to clearly state the purpose of this trip. Unexpectedly, instead of explaining, Nemo feels his authority challenged. He insists on forcing everyone to obey the captain's orders, but he forgets that the sailors are rebels, and now they are not afraid to rebel again. Nemo is disarmed and confined to his quarters. The first mate is elected as the new captain. Now, the return journey will only take 2 days and is relatively safe. The group decides that after leaving the Arctic, they will find a place to sell the Nautilus, divide the money, and go their separate ways. Lena, on the other hand, sees through Nemo's desire for revenge, but his thirst for vengeance has clouded his mind, making him indifferent to the feelings of the sailors. Nemo tries to deny it, but Lena asks him to state the name and background of each sailor, rendering him speechless because he truly can't do it. Hearing this, Lena seizes the opportunity. You don't even understand them, yet you demand their loyalty. Why not tell them who you are? The captaincy of the Nautilus has changed hands, but the sailors immediately encounter a new problem. Due to the unstable magnetic field of the Arctic, the compass malfunctions, and the gauges start spinning wildly. Although the first mate has worked with Nemo for a long time, he is clearly not capable of leading. He quickly loses control, causing the Nautilus to plunge straight to the seabed. And at this moment, another piece of bad news arrives. The pockmarked man discovers a leak in the hull near the torpedo room. Initially, they think it was caused by the Dolet's cannon fire, so the first mate sends someone to repair it. But they are completely unaware that it's a completely different mark. Fortunately, Nemo still has a loyal bearded friend. He uses the excuse of changing shifts to take the white-haired woman away, successfully freeing Nemo. But now, the Nautilus is in dire straits. Nemo also realizes his mistake and immediately puts on a diving suit to investigate. The crack is clearly not caused by cannon fire. Just as Nemo bends down for a closer inspection, a strange insect emerges from the crevice. From that knot opening, the insects immediately swarm throughout the cabin. Soon after, a large queen insect reveals its sharp mandibles, as if declaring the Nautilus its territory. Notably, this also exposes their weakness. Eliminating the queen will resolve the threat. As the insects crawl into the engine room through the ventilation ducts, the sailors immediately take action. The pockmarked man and the housekeeper choose the most primitive method of insect extermination. Fortunately, there are switches installed inside the ducts, but this can only slow down the insect's advance. The key is to see how Captain Nemo handles the situation. He dons a self-made steam-powered sprayer, determinedly enters the torpedo room, aims directly at the queen, and pulls the trigger. As soon as the queen is in danger, the metal-eating insects in the ducts retreat en masse, joining the ranks protecting their queen. Captain Nemo feels his scalp tingle, his entire body engulfed in a thick swarm of insects. Clearly, the attack has been effective. Nemo shouts, "Don't worry about me," and orders the crew to quickly deal with the queen. The first mate also realizes that these insects have a preference for magnets, so he retrieves more magnets from the compass. It turns out they are only attracted to magnets. The first mate immediately stuffs the queen into a torpedo and launches it. As the torpedo is loaded into the launcher, the other metal-eating insects in the cabin follow suit. The first mate patiently waits until their entire family is reunited, then immediately closes the hatch and presses the launch button. But now, the Nautilus is perched on the edge of an abyss. At the bottom of the valley lies a swath of light formed by bioluminescent organisms. While they have escaped the insects, they are still threatened by the Arctic's magnetic field. Unexpectedly, Nemo makes a crazy suggestion. If all the sailors gather on the command deck, the Nautilus will completely lose its balance and fall into the bioluminescent light, then rely on the power of nature to break free from the magnetic field's control. This time, to gain the trust of the sailors, Nemo no longer hides his identity. He reveals that he is actually an Indian prince, but the East India Company, wanting to seize his family's fortune, cruelly harmed his wife and children and framed him, landing him in prison. Therefore, Nemo's only goal in life is to take revenge on the East India Company. This story evokes empathy from the sailors. In fact, they became prisoners, forced to build ships for the East India Company, all because they were wronged. The sailors introduce themselves one by one, officially joining Captain Nemo's revenge squad. As the first mate and the captain embrace, the balance is broken, and the Nautilus plunges straight into the abyss. At this speed, they will cross the entire Arctic within 3 days. Of course, if they want to avenge everyone, the first thing they need to do is equip the ship and acquire weapons. So, the entire crew sets off to find treasure. This is the first shipwrecked treasure the Nautilus has found, but the surrounding waters are filled with skulls, as if they have entered the realm of the afterlife. As the submarine continues forward, an oppressive and suffocating feeling descends upon them. It turns out that this is where the Spanish fleet carrying gold and silver sank years ago. The seabed must be filled with treasures. The crew members try to contain their excitement and carefully dive into the valley. As the darkness transitions to light, a breathtakingly majestic scene unfolds before their eyes. Towering stone pillars stand tall on the surrounding seabed, making them feel as if they have stumbled into a celestial paradise. Captain Nemo and the crew members, donned in diving suits, search for the treasure buried on the seabed. As they pass through a cluster of giant seaweed, an ancient ship with strange symbols appears before them. Nemo steps onto it alone, preparing to make history. Unexpectedly, the skeleton on the throne suddenly moves. It turns out to be a fish emerging from within. The crew members breathe a sigh of relief. Indeed, there are no ghosts under the sea. They were just scaring themselves. But Nemo notices something unusual. The sword in the skeleton's hand is corroded and wouldn't fetch much money. Moreover, the surrounding treasure chests are empty. Could it be that the treasure has already been taken? Nemo wants to search around, but unexpectedly, the crew members are suddenly attacked. By the time he returns, there's not a single person in sight. While Nemo is bewildered, a dark figure suddenly rushes forward and ambushes him. When Nemo wakes up from his coma, he discovers that he and the crew members have become prisoners. The woman leading the group claims to be the queen. Their tribe consists mainly of women who have protected this underwater treasure for generations. All treasure hunters who come seeking it are dealt with ruthlessly. The skulls that the Nautilus saw on the periphery were a warning to outsiders like Nemo. Just as the crew members' heads are about to be turned into skewers, Nemo struggles and shouts. Unexpectedly, he has read the laws of this tribe in a book, which includes a clause stating that criminals have the right to defend themselves. Seeing Nemo struggling desperately, the queen doesn't object. The defense ceremony hasn't been held for a long time. It's a good opportunity to entertain the warriors and send someone to investigate what kind of vessel Nemo is talking about. However, the crew members are now disheartened. They didn't expect to lose their lives here without finding the treasure. But Nemo comforts them, saying that the treasure hasn't disappeared. It has just been salvaged by the tribe. Whether it's the decorations on the door frames, the gems on the warriors' daggers, or even the eating utensils, everything holds significant value, especially the ruby on the queen. Its value alone could build another Nautilus. After some preparation, Nemo begins his self-defense. He states that he isn't searching for the treasure for himself, but to destroy the East India Company and liberate India from colonial rule. Of course, his words alone can't convince the queen, so the crew members step forward to testify that the outside world has entered the industrial age. The queen shouldn't stay confined in the mountains but should go out and see the vast world. With the tribe's wealth, they could easily buy any colony. These words almost persuade the queen, but changing one's mindset isn't easy. Ultimately, the crew members are still sentenced to death. Just as the warriors raise their spears, prepared to strike, Nemo and the crew members secretly free themselves from their bonds. Thus, a fierce battle ensues. Although the warriors are well trained, they are more accustomed to fighting underwater and are momentarily unable to subdue the crew members. The crew members even take the opportunity to loot the tribe's treasure. While fighting, Nemo calls for everyone to run towards the cliff. Everyone knows that jumping off the cliff into the water won't result in immediate death. But as the crew members escape one by one, the queen becomes increasingly anxious. Nemo is pinned down by the queen, nearly losing his life under her sword. At this moment, he unexpectedly rolls to the side, escaping her grasp. He takes the opportunity to steal the ruby from the queen, then runs to the edge of the cliff and jumps. But surprisingly, Robert is injured in the back from a shield bash earlier and can only struggle in the water. Nemo hastily swims to rescue him but accidentally drops the ruby to the bottom. Between the life of his friend and the priceless ruby, Nemo resolutely chooses the former. No one expects the crew's actions to enrage the queen. She enters a secret chamber and resolutely activates a mechanism. Immediately, a giant round stone shoots out, colliding with a large pillar. A domino effect ensues, causing a series of pillars to collapse. It turns out the queen has decided to completely seal off this area as revenge. But by trapping the Nautilus, the tribe's connection with the outside world will also be buried. Notably, not only has Nemo injured her warrior, but he has also looted countless treasures and even managed to escape safely. This is an insult that the Queen absolutely cannot tolerate. As the pillars collapse, huge waves instantly surge on the surface. The Nautilus, dodging and struggling to move forward, rushes towards the narrow passage they entered at maximum speed. Just as the adjacent pillars are about to collapse, they finally escape danger. Now, their perilous treasure hunt has come to an end. Although they have lost the ruby, the diamond Lena obtained is enough for them to equip the Nautilus for their revenge against the East India Company. Not long after, the director of the East India Company receives a report, learning that the Nautilus has entered London's waters. He immediately orders the guards to be on high alert, unaware that Nemo is silently observing from just outside the door. Captain Nemo has made thorough preparations for this final battle. Although Nemo has upgraded the Nautilus to overthrow the government-backed East India Company, relying solely on force is clearly impractical. He decides to employ a more clever method, manipulating the stock market. First, he sends crew members to major ports to spread false rumors, claiming that the company has exhausted its funds to build the Nautilus, inciting workers to go on strike. Clearly, the concept of a public relations department doesn't exist in this era, so the East India Company's stock price continues to plummet, and the shareholders quickly become anxious. Seizing this opportunity, Nemo decides to divide his forces into 3 groups, utilizing connections from his university days. He invites a former classmate to perform a play. With the large diamond obtained from the mysterious land, they lie and claim to have a diamond mine in India. The two work together seamlessly to deceive a major shareholder into selling his shares. The first mate is more straightforward, directly sneaking into a shareholder's home and stealing his share certificates. The most troublesome is Lena's group, as she is forced to wear her cumbersome dress again, using the excuse of fulfilling her marriage promise to trick the major shareholder, Henry, into signing a share transfer agreement. Looking at the densely packed clauses, Henry thinks it's just an ordinary marriage contract. He looks up at his beautiful bride-to-be. Not wanting Lena to think he doesn't trust her, Henry hastily glances at the document and signs it. Once everything is in place, they go to the East India Company to attend the emergency shareholder meeting. At this moment, the director is patiently explaining that the company will not go bankrupt and will definitely catch the person who spread the false rumors. But as soon as he finishes speaking, Nemo confidently walks in. The director wants to call the guards, but Nemo throws a stack of share certificates onto the table. The guards' duty is to protect the safety of the shareholders and the company, so naturally, they can't touch Nemo. Nemo seizes the momentum, summoning all the crew members into the meeting room. Each one proves their shareholder status. As a major shareholder, Nemo decides to exercise his authority, removing the director and others from their positions. But Henry, who is sitting and listening, laughs contemptuously, saying that without his support, Nemo cannot hold more than 50% of the shares. But before he can gloat, Lena betrays him by presenting a stack of share certificates. Henry becomes the most pathetic figure, not only losing his wife but also being completely swindled out of his fortune. After becoming the largest shareholder, Nemo immediately exercises his authority. He removes the director from office, disbands the guard squad, and finally announces the dissolution of the East India Company. Surprisingly, this decision receives support from the blonde-haired captain. In fact, he is tired of his days at sea and just wants to go home and rest. As the guards hand over their weapons to the crew members, the director still wants to make one last attempt, trying to draw his weapon and attack Nemo. The meeting room instantly descends into chaos. While Nemo successfully takes his revenge, he also wins Lena's love. Fortunately, there is still important business to attend to. Nemo throws a stack of documents in front of the director, demanding he stop taxing the Indian colonies and release all the imprisoned laborers. Naturally, facing such a direct threat, the director reluctantly complies. Then, Nemo walks to the company's vault and loots the treasures inside. In a seemingly ordinary box, Nemo discovers a very familiar stone. Nemo pockets it and burns all the company's confidential documents. As everyone prepares to retreat back to the Nautilus, Nemo stops Lena. Although the company has been dissolved, the British Empire backing it will not let them go. From now on, the Nautilus will face pursuit from the entire empire. To protect Lena, Nemo reluctantly leaves her on land. But Lena can't understand his intentions. As she angrily walks away, Nemo and the others board a carriage and return to the Nautilus. However, they are unaware that Lena, left behind, is being threatened by Henry. After being repeatedly deceived, even a fool would be enraged. He even tries to force Lena to marry him at gunpoint. Fortunately, the housekeeper arrives in time and takes care of Henry's other leg in the same manner as before. Now, whether Nemo agrees or not, Lena is determined to join the Nautilus. But just as this crisis is resolved, Another problem arises for the Nautilus. The ousted director, driven mad by anger, runs to the warship Dolet and demands the guards take action. But the blonde-haired captain has tasted freedom. He states that he no longer needs to obey orders. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this, the director points his weapon at the guards, forcing the blonde-haired captain to comply. Left with no other choice, the soldiers on the Dolet begin attacking the Nautilus. Fortunately, Nemo has upgraded the submarine. During the clash with the Dolet, it proves to be no less formidable. Seeing the Nautilus sail past him, the enraged director yells in fury. Now that he has both wealth and power, Nemo has reinforced the Nautilus's armor. The cannon fire has no effect. But this is London after all. If they alert the Royal Navy, it will be very dangerous. Fortunately, Nemo has made proper arrangements, instructing the crew to plant explosives on the bridge to block the Dolet's pursuit. But the director witnesses this scene through his binoculars and immediately orders his soldiers to take action. The blonde-haired captain tries to stop him but is shot by the director. With a longing for freedom, his soul departs to another world. The director grabs a weapon and attacks himself, but he is ultimately a step too slow. A loud explosion echoes as the tower bridge collapses into the sea. 2 crew members jump into the water in time and are rescued back to the Nautilus. Although a crew member suggests waiting for Lena before setting sail, after hearing Nemo's explanation, they also feel that they shouldn't drag her into the danger of being pursued by England. At this moment, Lena also rushes to the harbor, but she only sees the receding figure of the Nautilus. Nemo's resolute action fuels her fighting spirit. She vows to board the Nautilus again, relying on her own strength. In another corner of the city, the dejected director is intercepted by a familiar figure and promptly sent to meet his maker. It turns out that Robert wants to repay Nemo for saving his life. But as a spy, he doesn't forget his mission, secretly gathering complete blueprints of the Nautilus. Although the core engine design is missing, with enough money, a Nautilus without infinite energy can be replicated. His employer excitedly rubs the stone in his hand, eager to go to Atlantis and find the treasure. Meanwhile, Nemo, thousands of miles away, seems to sense something. When he puts the 2 stones together, it's as if he sees the designer holding the stone and talking to him. If this stone has a long-distance communication function, it means that the designer didn't perish in Atlantis. Nemo excitedly shares this news with the crew. Now, whether it's to rescue their old friend or search for treasure to fight against the British Empire, they need to return to Atlantis once again.